Morning time and Elliot's Loft is open. So I'll say good morning. I'm Mark Elliott, the host of When Black Men Talk. I have the honor of welcoming back Dr. Susan E. Schwartz. Good morning, Dr. Schwartz. How are you feeling?
I'm good. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
I'm sure folks remember the last time you were on. We discussed your book, The Absent Father Effect from Daughters, Father's Desires and Father Wounds. But the more I kind of did a little research, you have written quite a few books, and I came across your book of Couples at the Crossroads, 5 Steps to Finding Your Way Back to Love, and I was like, wait a minute, Doc didn't tell me about this one, so I wanted to kind of how marriage get to the crossroads. So I'm going to start basically when we say crossroads for couples, what could be considered the crossroads?
Oh my goodness. Well, so many things. Let me say the um the big one is, of course, when things are completely awful. That's the crossroads. But the crossroads start in many different ways along the route of a relationship. Usually, the communication very subtly breaks down. People forget to ask about each other. They forget to check. They forget to say, "What did you dream last night?" They forget to hug each other very subtly. And then it's like a little crack gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the 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 issue is how we make sense out of the cracks and from them find repair, which means that both people are going to have to change. It's not just the relationship that changes, but that changes as both people change.
I agree. I agree with that 100%. I want to go back to kind of like the foundation of marriage, the marriage in thought per in a percent of how we look at marriage, because legally and socially, it's recognized as a union between two people, and we forget this part. We really kind of don't kind of pay attention to it being a contract in a sense that we kind of make not only with the state but also with the our union when we stand before God. And I think a lot of times that's not thought about. We're looking at all the stuff that goes with the nice, the dress, the this, the that, how the wedding's going to be. And, love sometimes is not even mentioned. So I wonder sometimes when we stand back and think about it, is marriage clear and focused, or is something that we desire but don't have a clear focus to what marriage really represents? Your thoughts, please.
Yes, well, so I'm going to present a little bit of the perspective of Jungian analytical psychology and love and what you said, um, one's spirituality, which goes beyond whatever religion, but it's actually one's approach in a very respectful way to one's own inner spirit, the spirit between people. And what you were saying is, I think you're right. People fall for it being in a way superficial, even though they are taking it very seriously. But the real issue is what is going on within each of the people and what do they see in themselves, in the other. In other words, what are they projecting that really helps them connect? And how aware are they of this part of their psychology and their own development? So the contract, I think you're right. Oftentimes people say, "I love you," but what do they really mean by that? And if you don't love yourself, how do you love somebody else? It's kind of true.
Absolutely. Another thing too, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking a lot of times when couples are at odds, we point the finger at the other party first before we kind of point the finger at ourselves.
Yes.
We're quick to blame and say what they're doing, and we don't take time to look at the role we're playing and to ask ourselves and basically really examine who we are and what role we're playing. But we're quick to basically point the finger and go, well, this person here, well, she's doing whatever. But I believe if we kind of start and look at ourselves and see the role, what we're doing and the role we're playing and express that honestly to our partner, I think that could help out a lot. Now, it's just my way of thinking. But when I think about that, I'm always amazed because even throughout the relationships that I experienced in my life or when I was married, I always kind of noticed when we had conversations, always came with blame. It comes with blame first,
Yeah.
not like, okay, not let's talk about what's really going on. So it almost to an extent where if they can blame someone and leave it there, everything should be fine.
Well, you just described the projection that I was talking about, which is that people see in the other person what oftentimes what they don't want to see in themselves. And the other thing that you said is that, and this is what I have found, and I think it shortchanges men. So many people will say, he, whoever he is not emotional. He doesn't understand. I can't explain myself. I know he doesn't get it. I never hear how he feels. And the issue might be that whoever the partner is, they're not really clearly saying and sitting down, wait a second, what is my part and what is your part? So, what you were saying about yourself, you could say, we could extend it to a lot of different people and say, do you really sit down with each other and admit, oh my goodness, I put onto you my deal. I need to take it back and understand what's going on inside of me. It makes people then more equal. It makes them more responsible and, in a way, more spiritual to be able to say, oh, I admit it. I said it wrong. I did it differently. I really needed to hear you better. It takes a lot to be able to do that and to learn communication skills. I think a lot of people don't learn communication skills. And even when you spoke about that book that I wrote on the father, do we learn from, or we do learn from our parents how to act in relationships from our fathers as well? And that's not just men. I mean, everybody learns from whoever is raising them how to have a relationship.
Yeah. I always thought, and I felt this way. I'm thankful for what my parents placed in front of me, what they gave me in terms of being in a relationship, being a man, being a father, and stuff of that nature. But I felt like they could only bring me so far. It
Yeah.
was my responsibility at
Yes.
that point to pick up the baton,
Yeah.
to go further, to be better, to be stronger in those areas. And I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody else, but I just always looked at it that way to where it was my responsibility to take what they give. And they can only give but so much. Like just like myself, I can only give but so much. But whatever the best I could give or whatever the best I was offered, I shouldn't stop there. I should use that as a rule, but take that and improve upon that and make it greater.
I agree with you. And as you're talking, I'm wondering, how did you learn that? Because a lot of people do not take that next step of, I got this, and it's my responsibility to build on it. A lot of people take a bit of it's not being lazy, it's being unconscious and being maybe afraid of taking it a step further because they don't know what's going to happen. So you were able to do that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you did it, but it's not usual, actually.
Well, thank you. It was just the mindset. It was just something I felt. It was like, okay, this is not enough. I mean, I appreciate what they offered, but it's not enough. I need to basically, in so many words, put my spin on it,
Yeah.
put my touch on it, and modify. In reality, I kind of take that mindset to life as anything that I approach to do. But yeah, I want to roll us back to something I saw a while ago, and I saw this picture. I saw this, and I took a picture of it, and I
Mhm.
kept it in my gallery for a few years. And ironically, I stumbled upon it going through my pictures the other day. But I thought this was real interesting. It said a perfect marriage is just two imperfect people who refuse to give up on each other. And I said to myself, in a way, there's a lot there. It could be a nice slogan,
Yeah.
but in a sense, that's some harsh reality.
Hmm.
Harsh reality. When you think about it, so when I saw that, I said, you know what? This is a great one for Dr. Schwartz. Let's get her opinion.
I think it's super, don't you do as well? Because you know what? I think that when people come up against something that is difficult, they actually oftentimes don't know and don't have the language to figure a way through it. There is something about being able to have access to the language of emotions. I think that is a reason why a lot of people will go into some kind of counseling, analysis, look at themselves, something because they don't know what to do. But if they are brave enough, it takes a lot of courage. That phrase that you found takes a lot of courage, and a lot of people would like to have it easy. And a relationship is a growth producing experience. Many people are afraid of growing because they don't know what they're going to grow into.
Ooh, I want to have you say that one more time because I've never. It's so accurate, but I can't remember ever hearing a relationship spoken that way. When you say relationship, can you go back and say that one more time, please?
Well, I'm sure I won't remember the exact words, but, but a relationship is something that you actually grow into and you grow from, and you will not grow really when it is just all sweetness and light. I think that facing a close, intimate relationship with someone really pushes psychological growth and development. And many people are afraid of that. And therefore, they get dissuaded. They say, well, we don't get along, so goodbye. Well, why don't you try to figure it out? Maybe you will get along.
Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. Now, if you can answer that, why do you think they're afraid? Because you're right. Whether there's, I have my ideas, but why do you think people, when they get to that point and just kind of basically would turn their back and run based out of fear?
Because actually, they're going to learn about themselves and they're going to learn about what is unconscious lying around inside of them. And most people are afraid of the unknown. So the unconscious is the unknown. Most people are afraid of it because you don't know it. It's like you go down a strange street driving and you think, wow, what is this? Where am I? And you actually, if you have a viable relationship, you're going to constantly be moving into different territory. I always am wondering why people think it is a good thing to never argue. My parents never argued, or I don't argue with so and so. And I always say, why not? Because if you know that you can present your side, they can present their side, and you can have a tension in between, that's going to create growth. So it's the tension between the two that creates growth and development. We don't grow when it's just smooth sailing, you know? You just smooth sail. That's all you get. But when you're really going to develop totally as far as you can, you got to have something to come up against. It's always
Uh,
true. Yeah. A crisis creates growth. It just does.
No, I can sign up to 100%. It's amazing because hearing what you just said, I believe, arguments, if it's done in a way to benefit, and that's how it should be done. If you're actually listening, effectively listening to each other and
Yeah.
trying to basically take away what's being said, it can be growth. But I hear this from men quite a bit, more than women. Oh, I don't
Mm,
like to argue. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to. And when I hear that, I always think, okay, in a way, it's like giving up and surrendering when they say that. And I'm not sure if they're aware when they say that, and maybe don't like the feeling of arguing. But to me, it's like when I say surrendering, you're not applying yourself. You're choosing to remove yourself in a sense and say, well, I don't like to argue. Well, some things I don't necessarily like to do, but I do them anyway for the benefit of the good. So when I hear that, I'm always kind of a little amazed. And it's like, yeah, you're not really kind of placing yourself to kind of benefit and grow. But when I was researching your book, I came across something that was interesting. And
mm,
I want to kind of bring that back because that one thing I noticed was that you stated, or the write-up basically stated, that there was a survey done of people that got divorced, and after they were divorced, they realized that they could have worked harder for their marriage when they were married.
yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say that's super surprising, but when you look at the percentage, it makes me go, ooh, because I always looked at it like this to me. When you're in something, why not work as hard as you can, apply yourself as much as you can? So if it does come to an end, it doesn't work out, you can say to yourself, I gave all I had to give. And to me, there's a sense of comfort in that. So
That's
when I came across that, that's how I looked at it. I was like, okay. And I was kind of a little not dumbfounded, but I was a little surprised that the percentage was that high.
hmm it's true. I think actually we live in a culture, so we could say in the general culture of the United States, which might be different in different countries, but we live in a culture of we expect smoothness. It's like we expect our team to win. And if that is us, we want it, we want it easy. And what usually happens statistically, people who don't work it out with the current person they're with, they usually tend to repeat it. In some ways, they're going to repeat the exact same problem because they weren't dealing with it. And of course, you also need somebody who is willing to go to the mat with you. When you said about people who, you said men who will say, I give in, I'm not going to argue. Well, maybe you don't need to argue. What about presenting your point? And if you back off from that, it's going to create resentment, bitterness, and hatred. And there you're down the path of, I'm out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does start that path. It opens up that door.
Yeah.
And ironically, what I've seen of most married men that choose that path not to basically engage or have that conversation, in a way, it empowers the woman. That's wow.
Yeah.
That's
And,
crazy.
but you know what's interesting? Look look at the parallel. Look at what we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about. We're talking about how do people persist in making things happen and in
Mm-hmm.
connecting. How do they get through the difficulty of kicked out or staying in? I mean, the whole thing kind of parallels what just happened.
Abs- absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you can learn to make sense of what happens and why, it doesn't become a disaster. It becomes, oh, let's try to figure it out. And that is what most people don't do. And
Which is
that's where the
amazing. Which is amazing, Dr. Schwartz, when you think about it. I mean, if you're not going to do that with your spouse, who are you going to do that with? When you think about it, when you're not going to basically really work with your spouse to understand and try to get to the bottom of things and improve, Who else can you do that with? Who else should you do that with? That's amazing to me.
Well, I always think that if you have real relationships with a spouse, friends, whatever, you're really going to take the chance to be honest and to say, the hard things and the wonderful things. So that is another piece that maybe gets in the way of relationships, which is people who don't know how to show love to each other. They stop doing it, those little wonderful things.
You know something I just heard when you said being honest, and I think that goes out the window quite early in a lot of marriages. And it's not like they just want to lie to their partner. I'm not trying to suggest that, but I have a feeling that they get a point to where if I say this to her or she says this to him, how are they going to feel afterwards?
Really?
So that, yeah, I can speak for, I'll speak for some men.
Okay.
I think men, when sometimes when we're in situations and we say a certain thing and she reacts to it over emotionally, we get to the point where we want to avoid that scene again. So men at that point have a couple of choices. Either they choose not to say some things that's we feel going to upset her, or we avoid bringing it up. In a way, still lying in a sense because we're not
Yes.
really being truthful about it.
No.
And so what happens is we we kind of cut off that part of communication because in a sense he doesn't feel it's a place he can really talk about and be honest and just say what he's feeling without maybe feeling ridiculed, being looked upon a certain way or thought of a certain way. So he kind of pulls back, and therefore, the honest, straightforward communication doesn't exist from him like it should fully.
Well, I agree with you, but he's actually lying. So he's the liar, and he is then projecting onto her that she's over emotional. This is a general he. Okay, it's not
Hmm.
specific. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, but he's saying she's too emotional. Well, the other side of that, maybe he is not emotional enough. And maybe by getting involved, really involved, saying truly how he feels, he will actually get closer to himself. And that's really why he projects it onto her and says, "Oh, I can't tell her." Well, why doesn't he try? He might find out something about himself that he has been avoiding.
Hmm. That's good. I like that. That's deep. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
He's not allowing himself to really open up and really tap into his emotions.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I. So I would also add to that. There are women as well, or whomever, who will say about the other person, that person will never understand, so I won't say anything. It's the same story. But how do you know they won't understand unless you try? There's a concept in Jungian psychology, it's kind of applies here. It's called the shadow. So it's a part of ourselves that, is kind of behind us that we don't really look at, but where we see it is in our partner. So
Hmm.
we see the thing we're not looking at and sometimes don't want to look at. Now, that could be that the partner is marvelous and we are envious, or the partner is not what we want them to be. And so what, it's not that they're not what we want them to be, it's that we are not what we want to be. And
Ooh.
so we put onto that person, they're the problem. They're not the problem. It's our own shadow, it's our own piece we have to look at. So if somebody will stick in the conversation, emotional, not emotional, whatever, both people will learn so much and they will have a stronger relationship as a result.
There's a lot of work that go into having a strong relationship. A lot of work. Yeah, there is. It's one
How?
black man. I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
well,
please continue.
I just was going to interrupt. I'm sorry. I was
No,
going to
please. Hmm.
I was going to add on to what you said about work and
Hmm.
say pleasure and joy also.
Absolutely. There is.
Yes.
Yeah, and I believe from the work that's where the pleasure and joy. You're right. That's where it comes from. I'm a little surprised that we kind of give up as early as we do sometimes, but I want to go back to the kind of again the foundation of marriage in a sense because if you think about it, and this was written as well, the odds against long term marriages are
Hmm.
basically when you go against they're pretty high, which they really
Yep.
shouldn't be when you think about it. But they're
Mhm.
pretty high. It doesn't stop people from. I mean, in a sense, it has because if you look at some of the statistics now, if you want to believe them, younger people are waiting and they're delaying or are choosing not to marry at all. And then
Mhm.
some statistics I read, some of the older couples over 50, over 60s, they're running to divorce court. They're kind of moving away from it even if they've been together for a long period of time. And I'm not laughing for that fact, but I do find that a little comical because if you've been married for a long period of time, sometimes I don't totally understand that. But in a sense, I look at what are the factors, what could be some of the factors, and I think we covered some of them already. But when you think about some of the factors that are having the odds be high against for a long term healthy marriage, can we speak on some of those?
Yes, absolutely. I think that, and you're right, older people, there's a huge amount of divorce, partly because they look at their life and they say, I put up with this, and this, which already is awful because they put up with something. And they think, look at, before I die, I want to have a good time. I want to have pleasure and I want to have love. So they think it's going to be someplace else. And they might have built up such awful patterns that neither of them can really break it. And that might be part. And I think younger people are, might be, it's possible, reacting to the insecurity of the world. So there's a lot of anxiety and insecurity in the world, and it makes it difficult to commit. And they might look at their parents in unhappy commitments and say, I don't want it, because the parents never learned how to communicate. I mean, you can go anywhere. You sit at a restaurant and you look at a couple who look like they might have been together, I don't know how long, whatever. So they might be on their phones. They also might not be looking at each other, or they're looking and it doesn't look wonderful. So they're bored with each other.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember years ago, I was at this restaurant and this couple sat next to me and they never said a word to each other.
You see?
they never, they never looked at each other. They ordered their meal, not one word.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I not trust me. I like peace. I love peace, but that's beyond peaceful. That's beyond peaceful.
Yeah.
Not one word.
Can
I
you
mean,
imagine?
it's like the other person wasn't even there. It was like they weren't even sitting there. And
Right.
it's like, yeah, I say to myself, there's a lot that's behind that. There's a lot because if you truly care about someone, how do you not engage enough to even care how they're feeling to have a conversation, to say something, and then that should be, coming out of you. And it was funny, but at the same time, I'm like, wow. But you're right.
Yeah.
You can sit back and observe sometimes, and you realize, yeah. And I hear you when you say about the older couples because yeah, they think, and the sad thing is that in reality, what they think is out there, it's probably not out there. You can go chase it at this point in your life, but it's probably not. And more because you're going to run up against some of the same things that you basically that you walked away from. And it's sad to an extent because to me, I remember a commercial a long time ago, and it always kind of stuck in my head. But it was this, and it's a funny when I say this, it's going to sound weird, but it was a Cialis commercial. But it had this older couple walking along the beach, just holding hand, showing their love. They're in love with each other, embracing each other, and they walk to these two bathtubs, sitting on the beach.
Yeah.
And he got in one, and she got in one, and they're having fun. And I'm like, to me, when you get to that time in life with someone, and the kids have moved on, things have happened. That's how I would want life to be with someone, as a point of saying, you know what, I'm out of here.
I agree with you. But there's another scenario that we could add to what you said, which is why didn't they get in the same bathtub? Do you
Okay.
see? Yeah, the image of how close can you really be and continue closeness. It's a lovely image that you had, and I was just expanding it into another image. But equally, I'm not sure that I think what happens is that people lose their image of whatever they thought love would be, and they give up on it. And
Hmm.
yeah, and the image might not have been real. It might have been based on wishes, and maybe they weren't even aware of their kind of idealization of what a relationship would be. And the reality can be actually better than the ideal if you really not just work on it, but you have intention about it. You focus on it. You care about yourself. You care about yourself. If you really care, you will also care about the other.
Hmm. It's interesting because, marriage and relationships bring forth different opportunities to grow. But at the same time, they allow us to feel some pain. As we spoke earlier, everybody, as you said earlier, a lot of times people think that it's just a matter of everything is going to be easy.
Yeah.
But in reality, we're going to, have some personal pains. There's going to be some times where, we're going to feel strong, we're going to feel weak. But I want to ask this, and this is something in my head, because I look at, and I just heard what you're saying about how some people may interpret love. And I think sometimes, not even sometimes, I think movies and television has given us a distorted idea what love and marriage should be. And I think sometimes we try to live up to what we see, he or she, and when it's not what they perceive, what Susan Lucci was doing or
Mm-hmm.
Luke may have been doing, we feel like we're being cheated.
I think you're right. I would add to also what you're saying that one of the places that people always say is they talk about fairy tales. It's a big part of Jungian psychology, fairy tales, mythology. You could say the themes in film, videos, etc. But usually in those, the prince or the princess at the very beginning, or the hero or heroine, always has to go through some kind of trial and tribulation, which is, it's like a descent into a place that they didn't know about, they're not prepared for. And then they come out at the end, uniting, in a sense, with themselves and with another. It's a union that takes place on many different levels. So you make a journey into yourself, and then you come out and you are more prepared to be in union with yourself in a more comfortable way and also with another. But what you are saying is that when things are too one sided and they just portray it's perfect or wonderful or she or he looks and acts marvelous, people want, I think, even more than ever, again, things to be easy. And if you compare yourself to that, well, are you going to be disappointed to begin with? And you're not going to like yourself. And you won't like your partner because they don't look like so and so in the movies or they don't act that way. And the point is, how do you really become your true self? Not a glitzy, perfect self, but a real self. And the only way you actually do that is through very intense, honest relationships.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, you co-wrote a book a little while ago, the entitled "Couples at the Crossroads: 5 Steps
Yeah.
to Finding Your Way Back to Love." I I didn't really want to give into the steps too much because I would like for folks to basically research and come to your book. But I want to understand what, and I have a general idea, but I would like for you to share what made you decide to basically put that together.
Well, the 5 steps are rather loose in the sense that those 5 steps, even though myself and the woman I wrote it with, Daniela Roher, we came up with five. Interesting because it's a number that it's not just 1, 2, 3. It takes a little effort, like we've been talking about, and it just gives a bit of an outline of how you can gauge how you are, what is happening, what's going on, and in a sense, an encouragement. So people oftentimes respond to guidance or a guide or an outline. And I think we can find that also from our partners. So if we say, what do you want and need? I'll tell you what I want and need. How are we going to get together at least every day and really share how we feel? It's so important to do that. How are we going to express our emotions and make room for each other to express emotions and not let the other person get away with avoiding? So that's just a bit. I think also the 5 steps actually mean persevere through it. Just keep going. Keep on trying. Keep on communicating. Keep on seeing what happens. And again, see if you can be honest with yourself and with your partner.
Very good. Very good. Dr. Schwartz, I want to thank you again for coming on. At the same time, I want to I want to ask you to share with our audience how they can contact you or reach out to you, because I'm sure there are people listening and they're hearing some things they haven't heard before, and they may need someone to react to and speak to, and that person could be you.
Yes, my website is www.susanschwartz, SCHWARTZ, And I must say, your comments and questions and where we have gone in this brief discussion have been very enlightening. So I hope that they are enlightening for your audience as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that part of it. That's what I love about this show. I really do. The conversations, and you never know what someone else can take from it. And it's for us, it's just talk. It's just back and forth. But if someone or people gain something and it opens up a thought process to something else, what's more beautiful than that, in my opinion?
You
It-
you just named it, and that's really living, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. The
Yeah.
joy we have. Well, we'll get together again soon. I want to thank
Okay.
everyone for giving us an ear. And, God loves you. We love you too. Take care of yourself.